Hi folks, how are you doing? I'm doing this video while the first round of the candidates tournament in Russia has just started, a couple of maybe an hour ago, something like that. And while I wanted to show you this interesting game from the European Championship in Armenia, in which we're gonna see yet one another of these young talents, which always seem to be coming from countries like Armenia, a chess talent factory. And today, and the game of today is he's played by a guy rated, a boy, really, kid rated 2234, a FIDE master of 13 years old from Armenia, which so far after the ninth round is having a performance of 2584 and is surely going for a GM norm in his hometown. His name is Martirosyan. And in this second round, he played against a GM from Romania, Vladislav Nevednichy. So let us see the game and let us take a look at how interestingly this kid from Armenia is going to beat a GM. So he plays the London system with white pieces. This boy Haik Martirosyan is white here. Bishop g7, e3. We have the London system. And black plays in more or less a kid style, a King's Indian defense. And well, in my limited chess knowledge, I have been told that this is more or less the best way to face London. Try to go for a fast e5 with knight bd7, playing a King's Indian defense scheme. But anyway, there are lots of ways of playing this. h3, a typical move. So to answer knight h5, for instance, to bishop h2, always these ideas. Black castles bishop e2. Now black decides to go for b6. So after c4 he plays bishop b7 and faces the London system with this double fianchetto system. And well, he's controlling dark squares, as you can see, with pawns, and the light squares of the center is controlling them with his pieces, with the bishop, with the knight. Well, more or less balanced position, interesting one. But still, the middle game will be the interesting part of this game. The opening is nothing out of control or anything. Knight c3 and knight e4. Black is playing more or less in a Nimzo-Indian or Queen's Indian defense style, fighting for the e4 square, occupying it with his pieces, giving freedom to the bishop on g7. He doesn't want to play moves like c5 right now. e5 isn't prepared enough, so if c5 d5 now, the bishop on b7 wouldn't be very happy. So knight e4 seems to be a correct move here. Here white takes, bishop takes, and queen d2. Well, in this kind of position, normally knight d2 is a move you want to make to harass this bishop on e4. Unfortunately, right now not possible because g2 is hanging. So queen d2 was played, and well, other possibility was probably to castle, and now black could play knight d7, preparing either e5 or c5 to break into the center, having a fine position. So queen d2 first played. Now black plays c5. Something must be done in the center. Other alternative was to try to go for e5. Here, well, white could retreat to bishop g3 or take here, in which case d takes, and if queen takes, rook takes, it seems white is winning a pawn on e5, but this is quite interesting. Bishop takes, knight takes, now black can take on g2. So more or less getting the pawn back and probably having more or less cool position, not bad at all. But Vladislav Nevednichy he chose here c5. Now white castles, taking on c5. He takes c5. Now black would have, for instance, the b open file for him to play. Probably not a bad position at all. That's why Martirosyan just keeps the tension in the center. He just castles. Now knight c6, and here white goes ahead and improves a little his position. He plays d5 finally, grabs the space in the center. Now knight a5 and knight g5. Nice move to remove the bishop from e4. Bishop f5 and now e4. Even more space in the center. Bishop d7 and now white's position is certainly looking much better than a couple of moves ago. He has much more space in the center. He has the bishop pair. Everything is protected. e2, c4. And these two pieces of black, the bishop on d7, the knight on a5, don't look that great. So white has even some attacking possibility in the dark squares against the king side. So white has definitely improved his position. Here black desperately goes for a counterplay on the queen side. He plays b5. It would be probably a little better to try to prepare it a little more with a6, as a4 for instance to prevent it is not possible since knight b3 is winning. But he probably didn't so after c takes d5 and rook b8, typical move to regain the pawn, black didn't really probably didn't saw or didn't expect this absolutely incredible move. Probably one of the nicest moves of the game, this b4 incredible sacrifice. He will, I can imagine just his face, amazed with this incredible sharp and brave decision of giving up some material. And now, in fact, this is a very interesting position and very interesting move here to play the b4 sacrifice. You're giving up kind of the exchange, the rook on a1. In exchange, you want to, well, you're attacking, of course, the knight on a5, but it can go away to b7. But the point is that white wants to get a couple of things, basically. Weakening of dark squares around black king and a couple of nice pawns on the queen side. His own pawns will be more or less well advanced and the passed pawn could arise there on the queen side. Very deep calculated move probably. So, well, black takes on a1. The other alternative was to go away with the knight, but now white has an easy game. Rook ac1, c takes before, queen takes before, and if knight c5, a5, and white has some very nice pressure on the queen side. His position is more active than black's one. Still playable, but white seems to be better here. But bishop takes a1 seems to be the critical move. You take the material white is giving to you. Rook takes a1. Now seems pretty logical to retreat with the knight. But in fact, the engines, for instance, already value white's position as quite a strong one and are willing to give material back with the move bishop takes b5. Now b takes a5, bishop takes on e2, queen takes a5, and in a position similar to one arising from a Bank or Volga gambit, interesting and unbalanced middle games, in which black has the b-file control and the passed c pawn, but his king side, particularly the dark squares, are quite vulnerable. So, well, still should be this should be still quite good for white, but really this is interesting and unbalanced position, quite sharp. This is what was the engine suggesting. Instead, knight b7 seems much more human decision, and now a4, just protecting that pawn on b5. Once again, it seems that white is looking really good. Bishop a6 seems it was possible. So after rook e8, banging in the center with e5, d takes, knight takes, and if c takes before, queen takes before, the knight is probably going to go to c6, and if taken, a strong passed pawn would be there on c6. So say knight d6, attacking the pawn, a4, a6, knight c6, and if bishop takes, knight takes. White has the bishop pair, very strong pawns on the queen side, and the material imbalance is more or less in white's favor here. Still a complicated game, but those pawns on the bishop pair should compensate the lack of material for white. But anyway, a4 seems once again very logical, just protecting the pawn so far. C takes d4 was played, queen takes, and now queen a5, willing to exchange queens. Of course, that would be in black's favor. as he would control his rooks would be active on the c file, etc. But kudos to white, he wants to attack. He recognizes the dark squares are weak on the king side, on black's king side, so he goes ahead with the attack. Well done. Rook fc8, queen c3 is kind of threatened to try to exchange once again queens and limit white's activity, but bishop d2. Now the queen is under attack. Queen c3 of course not possible anymore, so queen goes back to d8. And now black's pieces are kind of trapped. He has very limited space for his pieces, while white has lots of space on the queen side, on the center, and bishop pair. So adding to that the dark squares weaknesses on the king side, white has a favorable, very favorable position, so he goes ahead to open the center with e5. Bishop e8 was played here, trying to reorganize pieces. If taken, knight takes e5, and this knight is not threatening nothing concrete yet, but has an extremely good potential here to play either in the queen side or in the king side. This is a very nice looking knight on the center. After bishop e8, immediate response, bishop h6, going for the killer on the king side, going after the dark squares. Knight c5, improving pieces, but white's attack is already rolling. E takes d6, obvious checkmate threat, so f6 must be played. Here d takes e7, queen takes, and now bishop c4. The bishop pair is doing a hard job here. The threat is very obvious. d6 discovered check, the queen will be cooked. So queen d6 to stop that pawn from moving. Now queen d4 with the threat of playing bishop f4, forking queen and rook. And really the bishop pair is, as we're seeing here, that is very important, and the initiative is very important in this game. It's absolutely compensating the lack of material by white. Rook b7, getting away from that pin and just protecting g7 once again, just in case. But still, bishop f4 is played, queen goes to f8, now rook c1, and this is playing with some tactical possibilities, dealing with the c5 knight and the discovered checks on the king. And just to illustrate that, here king h8, getting away very wisely from that kind of tactical threats. Just to illustrate that, a silly move by black, so for instance h5, and now the point is that there are some tactical motives here for dealing with the knight, with the king. For instance, with h5, as I said, now d6 discovered check, king h8, and now knight d5, bishop d5. Sorry. So the rook is attacked, the knight is attacked. By the way, the knight is pinned. The rook cannot go to c7, so white is winning here. So this rook c1 move was much more dangerous than it looked to be. So lots of venom here, lots of tactical possibilities, taking advantage of the lack of coordination and space of black pieces. So king h8, but still now bishop a2. The knight is attacked, the knight is pinned, and white is just threatening to play d6, cutting the communication between queen and knight and take that knight for free. d6 is the threat, so now bishop d7. Now d6 wouldn't be that effective because the knight is not pinned anymore. The rook on c8 is protected by both the bishop and the queen. Knight e5 was played here, another spectacular move. This kid is on fire. What a game he's playing here, incredible. Just giving no rest to the GM. Instead d6 was, as I said, still good for white, but wouldn't be that effective than as we saw in the previous variation, in which white was absolutely winning. So knight e6 would be played here. Still, this is pretty much a blowout because bishop takes, now bishop takes e6, bishop takes e6. Nice move, knight g5. Knight cannot be taken and the bishop is under attack, so after bishop, for instance c8, knight goes to e4, attacking the pawn on f6. The only reasonable way not to lose it, rook f7, but still, as a matter of fact, white can take on f6 because here he has the resource of playing bishop e5, and white will be up 3 pawns, nothing less than 3 pawns, and just winning on the spot this game. but knight e5 was played. Beautiful once again. If taken, now bishop check, king g8. This rook takes first on c5 just to avoid knight e6 after d6 discovered check, to avoid knight e6. Rook takes, and if rook takes, now discovered check, and this is already done. Instead, after knight e5, so king g7 was played, but still the knight now goes to c6, having a normal strength there on c6, and black goes on a desperate mode, trying to just do something. Knight takes on a4, queen takes a4, and now g5, but after simple consolidating move, bishop e3 and a6, now bishop b1 is played, and the GM from Romania, Vladislav Nevednichy, had enough. He resigned the game against, don't forget, against a guy rated 22-34 and just 13 years old, a FIDE master from Armenia, Martirosyan. And well, the reason is more or less that white bishop pair is absolutely dominating the position. The knight on c6 is just huge, absolutely huge, and black cannot do anything. Black just resigned, giving white an astonishing victory. And so far, as I said, after the 9th round, this boy from Armenia is having a 25-84 performance, astonishing, and is probably going to get his first, as far as I know, GM norm in his hometown in this European Individual Championship in Armenia. Thanks for watching.